So we've had all this yapping and we haven't even gotten to the first string of fire yet. So let's get to it. Now the first 6 shots are going to be fired from retention at a distance of about 1.5 yards. So what this means is you're going to be drawing the gun and you're shooting from hip level without extending the pistol out too far from your body. This is supposed to be quick and dirty, so extreme accuracy is difficult and it's not necessary. The skills tested on the stage are how you successfully can pull the gun out and fire it as quickly as possible from the hip in a position where it's less likely to be grabbed or deflected by an attacker. Here we're going to employ the natural point of aim. It's a little bit different because your natural point of aim when the gun is extended is going to be different from when it's going to be fired from your hip. It's extremely important here though because you don't have the advantage of using your sights at all or even sighting down the top of the gun in order to ensure that you're on target. So what you need to do, line up your body so when the gun comes out it's going to be pointed at the center of the X ring. This means left and right, up and down. Your body is going to be off center from the target, so when the gun is held at your side, it's squared with the X ring. What this means is if you're right-handed and your gun's on your right side, you're going to be a little bit off to the left of the target. What that means is the gun is going to be in the middle, you're going to be to the side, and vice versa for left-handed people. Pull the pistol, brace your arm against your body. When talking about firing from a retention position, a lot of instructors are going to advise you to cant the top of the pistol away from your body in order to avoid possible malfunction that could be caused if the slide were to contact your body or your clothing. Personally, unless you're wearing a heavy coat, I think the risk of this happening is way overblown, but it's something to consider. Personally, again, I don't use this cant. The reason is the way the pistol is aimed. When you draw the gun and you hold it straight up and down, it's harder to move your wrist side to side than it is to move the muzzle of the pistol up and down due to your anatomy. Therefore, most of the error that occurs with these first 6 shots happens from either positioning your body incorrectly or you push shots up or down. The acceptable margin of error on the scoring rings is clearly bigger on the vertical plane than it is horizontally. Once you twist the gun on an angle, now you're opening yourself up to more of a diagonal spread, which doesn't help your score. So what am I saying? Basically, it's harder for you to be off to the left or to the right than it is to be off up or down. If you cant your gun, now up or down is actually a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. And since the target is bigger up and down than it is across, I think it's in your best interest to keep the gun up and down. Once you're properly lined up, it's just a matter of pulling the gun and firing the shots. You try not to move your feet between the strings of fire. That way, if your first shot is off, you adjust before you take your second 2 shots. If your second 2 shots are off, now you can move your feet a little bit before you take your final 3 shots. If your arm is braced against your body and you're in a good stance, you bang these shots off. You can do it in rapid succession. The gun is naturally going to come back to the same point of aim extremely quickly. And plus you're less than 5 feet away from the target, so any minor deviation is fine. If the person scoring your targets uses the 5 ring for scoring, what you have is nearly 8 inches wide and almost 21 inches tall. Unless you make a significant mistake, you should be able to get nearly all 30 points for these 6 shots. For the next 2 strings of fire, you're going to be asked to draw from a holster and fire 3 shots in 3 seconds. This stage is often referred to as point reference shooting or point shoulder shooting or something similar to that. So what they're implying by calling it this is that you don't have time to use the sights. This is wrong. You may not have time to take a clean and precise sight picture, but you absolutely have time to get a flash sight picture. It's just a matter of whether or not you're able to do it. Probably the most important thing to consider with the stage is your draw. 3 seconds is not a lot of time, and that includes your draw. So if you fumble your draw, all the time that you lose is time that you no longer have to actually take the shots. If it takes you 2 seconds to get the gun out of the holster and up on target, you have 1 second to take 3 shots. If you can get the gun out and on target in 1 second, now you have twice as much time to fire the gun. As I mentioned earlier, there should be time for you to line up the sights. Shooting is a balance of speed and accuracy, and the faster you go, the less accurate you tend to be. The stage requires you to be quick. Fortunately, it also happens to take place at only 9 feet away. This means that the precision of your sight picture can be pretty low and still be considered acceptable for you to break the shot. Once we move back to 45 feet, you're going to need to be more conscious of your sight picture. But up close, put the front sight somewhere between the rear posts and you pull the trigger. This is probably about as good a time as any to address a topic that seems to confuse a lot of people, and that's this idea of double taps or controlled pairs or double pairs. No matter how quickly I personally fire 2 or more shots, I am always seeing a sight picture in between. If you can't see a sight picture before you pull a trigger, then you're just asking for an inaccurate subsequent shot. The idea that you're getting one sight picture and you're pulling the trigger twice is not the way to get good hits. It might work some of the time, especially when the target's up close, but you're much better off slowing it down just a fraction of a second in order to get that sight alignment correct. Again, in the case of the targets that are only 3 yards away, the sight picture can be pretty sloppy, but it's still there to the extent dictated by these circumstances. If you are able to get a good draw, you should be able to get nearly all 30 available points for the stage, considering how close the target is. Now the next 2 strings of fire are where the wheels start falling off for some people. This stage is usually referred to as a body armor drill or a failure drill or a Mozambique drill. What it involves is putting 2 shots in the center mass and 1 shot into the head area of the target. This is the only time during the entire qualification that you're going to have to transition between 2 distinct points of aim during a single string of fire. The anticipation of the headshot, along with the smaller size of the scoring ring, leads to some trouble with some people. The first time through, you're going to have 5 seconds and you're going to start from your holster. The second time you shoot, it's going to be shot starting from low ready, and you're going to have 1 less second to complete it. Both times you're going to be at 7 yards away. This isn't very far, but it's also not very close. So proper fundamentals are going to be important if you want accurate hits. Now, some people score the headshots differently. In general, like I mentioned before, shots inside the ring count for 5 points, while hits outside the ring but within the silhouette of the head are worth 3 or 2, typically 2. However, sometimes those 2-point hits, are worth nothing, as are hits anywhere else in the body. So regardless, the point is to make those 2 headshots count because there's 10 points on the line there. Now, that being said, there's 40 other points available to the body, so dropping those in order to make headshots is not a good plan. Another tip is on the second string. With the second string, you don't have to draw. So what you're going to want to do before the buzzer goes off is get as good a grip and stance as possible. Another tip is to bring the pistol up as high as the test proctor is going to allow. Some of them are going to allow a high ready position where you're almost sighted in, and others are going to require a low ready position. Some of them might even require that you pull the gun in towards your body. The closer you start to having your arms extended and the gun on target, the more time you're going to actually have to fire your shots. The next stage is going to involve some one-handed shooting. If this is somewhere that you know you're going to lose a lot of points, the only thing you do is practice. Dry firing at home is going to help a lot, but you're probably going to need to get some practice in with live fire so you can experience what it's like to control the gun under recoil with only one hand. The first string involves drawing, taking 3 shots with 2 hands, and then 3 more with your strong hand only. You have 10 seconds, and this is at 7 yards. The second string is going to be the same thing, except you're going to use your weak hand or your support hand instead of your strong hand. 10 seconds is plenty of time to take 6 shots. Places where you can get some free time will again be with the draw, but it's also with moving the pistol from 2 hands to 1 hand, especially when you go to the support hand. When you've got your gun on 2 hands on your gun and you want to move it to your support hand, do it fast. Don't waste time here. Get a good solid grip and then get to shooting. Keep your arms extended, move the grip, break the shots. If possible, don't lose focus on your sights during this transition, and definitely don't bring the gun back into the body when you transfer. Firing one-handed is just like firing two-handed, except it's not nearly as stable of a platform. Therefore, you're going to see some more wobble in the sight picture. If you spend too much time trying to get it perfect, trying to control that wobble, you're just going to run out of time before the stage is over. This is going to be especially true with the support hand. You grip the gun. It should be about the same with one hand, except you want to bring your thumb down a little bit further and use it part of the hold. Many instructors will advise you to cant the pistol inward. We aren't talking about some sideways gangsta style, but rather just like a slight cant. I don't usually do this when I shoot with my strong hand at one single stationary target. I find that consciously tucking my elbow a little bit closer to the body while holding the pistol straight helps keep the muzzle tracking up and down instead of at an angle. But that being said, I do cant the gun when shooting support hand only because it helps pull the sight picture in front of my dominant eye. Additionally, if I'm shooting one shot each at a row of targets, I cant the top of the gun toward that direction that I'm moving, and it allows the recoil to help kick the gun over to the next target. But that's not relevant for this course of fire. The hand that is not on the gun needs to be pulled in close to the center of your chest. It's going to look very much like what the guy on the target is doing with his left hand. This position is going to help you stabilize your center of gravity by keeping your support arm or your off arm from wobbling your upper body around, and it has the wonderful benefit of making it impossible to shoot through your own hand, which sounds like a good thing. For this stage, we're going to start moving back to 15 yards. This isn't exactly a terribly long distance, but it's definitely long enough for your mistakes to be exaggerated and cost you points. If you were shooting group where the impacts were 5 inches across at 3 yards, that's going to open up to over 2 feet wide at 15 yards. So there is obviously a smaller margin for error. Here's where you're going to need to get a good sight picture and be careful when you're squeezing the trigger. This is also the distance where people start to lose the ability to clearly see the scoring rings. If up until this point you've been ignoring my advice about picking a recognizable aiming point between his fingers, you might actually start to cut the distance between the sides of the silhouette, which is not exactly what you want to do. And actually, it's at this distance that people start to forget about aiming at a point completely, and they just start shooting in the general direction of the target. If that's you, don't be surprised when your bullets start impacting off the bad guy. The first string of fire is shot in 10 seconds. You have 6 shots, and it's from the holster. There's nothing more to it. Take all 10 seconds if you need them, because you're not going to get any bonus points for finishing in half the time. A tip I would have here is clear the area of any spent brass before you start shooting, because you're going to be kneeling down, and if you kneel hard onto a piece of brass, it's not going to feel good and it's going to be distracting before you start your next string of fire. After the buzzer signals the end of your 10 seconds, you're going to have to reload your pistol. Most times this is going to be done from slide lock on the clock, and you're going to have 5 seconds to reload and take a knee before your next 10 seconds starts. Don't panic, because 5 seconds is an eternity to do one reload and kneel down. And in most cases, the worst thing that's going to happen is that you eat into the time you have to take the next 6 shots from the kneeling position. Basically, before you get started, be aware of where your spare mags are located. You keep them oriented properly in the holster and be quick about kneeling down. I'm going to put together a future video about speed loading a pistol as well. Before taking your next 6 shots from the kneeling position, make sure that you take an opportunity to reacquire your good grip on the gun. You should have time to make this adjustment off the clock before your 10 seconds starts, but if you don't, you still need to take the time to do it. These shots are taken from a ready position, so you're going to have more time since you won't have to draw. Personally, I find that the most stable position to shoot from when I'm trying to quickly kneel is to put my strong side knee on the ground and keep my support side knee up, and I use it as a support to brace my support arm. But there's countless ways you can do this. Some people prefer to put both knees down, others sit back on one foot or both feet. Find whatever works for you and feels the most stable. In the case of shooting this qualification, you're not going to have to kneel down and get up too quickly. In a real life defensive situation, this isn't exactly going to always be the case. Other than that, shoot your 6 shots from the kneeling position just as you did from the standing position. All the same caveats about sight picture apply. And if when you watch this video, your first thoughts are, man, that guy's going to shoot his camera, then you probably need to work on your accuracy and fundamentals. There are 12 shots and 60 points available for this stage, which is nearly a quarter of all available points. There's nothing special about these 2 strings of fire, but if you mess them up, there's potential to lose a ton of points. Here we are, final stage of the qualification. These 2 strings of fire are going to involve shooting from behind a barricade. The only difference here is that you're going to be leaning out from both sides of cover. You're going to have 20 seconds to complete each of these strings. What that means is time will absolutely not be a factor here. Essentially, if you can't shoot 4 shots in 20 seconds, you're not going to be able to shoot them in 20 minutes, so don't sweat the time. I think that the reason why you have so much time here is because this stage used to be fired at 25 yards away. Most contractors shoot it at 15 yards, which I believe is why you have more time than you actually need. FPS federal officers, I think, still shoot it at 25. In either case, it's nothing more than a slow fire accuracy test. You start from behind cover. Do not crowd cover. There's this tendency for people to get right behind cover because they feel like it brings them closer to the target or it makes them more safe. I'm not sure. However, when you're right on top of it, you're going to have to move awkwardly to the side, and the barricade itself might interfere with your draw. Step back when you draw, or before you draw, and then you can step up and diagonally. Also, personally, I would avoid using the barricade as a brace for your hands or your arms when you shoot. I'm just using some cardboard here to represent a barricade since I don't have a better one. So I don't personally have that option anyway, but there's a good chance that the cover you're going to be using is going to be some sort of wood or metal barricade. There's this temptation to use the edge to brace your hands. At 15 yards, I think this is unnecessary. The sideways pressure it keeps on the gun makes it track in a weird way during recoil, and it's a bad habit to stick your pistol out beyond corners in real life. However, if your barricade is very stable and you feel like you need to do this in order to be accurate, then go ahead. Remember that this is only a qualification course and it's not real life. Be aware, though, that many well-used barricades have bullet impacts along the edges, so there might be splintering or jagged sections that are going to cut your hands or arms when the gun recoils if you're pressing hard against them. Before the buzzer, once again, clear your floor space of empty brass. Then you draw. You lean the body out to the side just far enough to see your target. You very methodically take your shots. Don't forget that you have forever and a day to make good, solid hits. Take a knee quickly and do the same. When you're leaning outward, you'll possibly naturally cant the gun in the same direction as the lean. If you need to do this, then do it. If you can keep both the gun and your head upright, it'll often help keep the gun tracking straight up and down during recoil. I find the gun cants a lot more when I lean out to the support side for some reason. It happens to a lesser degree when I'm kneeling on that side because I'm not leaning my upper body as much. You have 8 shots and 40 points available on this stage. Once again, you've got forever and a day to shoot it. You need to try to get as many of those shots as possible. Okay, folks, that's about it. Hopefully you were able to put all this together and get your magic number of 200 out of 250 points in order to pass. More importantly, I hope I've convinced at least some of you about the importance of maintaining good, solid firearm skills when you're in this line of work. Not everyone who carries a gun for work is going to be a gun person any more than you're some sort of aficionado of OC or baton or handcuffs. However, you owe it to yourself and the people around you to maintain some level of proficiency with your gear. If you'd enjoyed this tutorial, please comment, like, subscribe. Hopefully I'm going to put out more videos like this. Thank you, folks, and stay safe.